Impulsive recording. So at this point, whatever. Yeah. So I forget some of the things I put in here. Like this is, yeah, I forget the non-cinematic. Right. This is slow and poorly made TV is what we're creating here. Um, the Puxening, there can be only two courses. Yeah. Highlander, just one of the great. It's not a great movie. It's not a great movie. It's a disaster, but it's a conceptual delight. Anyway, all right. So that's kind of fun. I think you can now get. Of course, as you can imagine, macro data refinement. I think there's material on Lumen, right? Lumen. You go, Jace. You go get this. You should hand them out. This much. I don't think this is stickers. I think they're just out. Look at this. They're having a great time. Obviously, this is completely um, not not supported. Yeah.
Some of the stuff was like there was like the melon ball party or whatever, and there was like what was it like
Which the
something
Dylan
dance?
character was pumped about, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
just
there was like
pumped.
the something dance experience or whatever.
Which that was much more than we expected. I think. Apparently, the where they put the data, the scary data, and sometimes it's comforting data, like they have reactions to them. They put them into things that look like the tempers. There are these four tempers. So it's sort of the emotional, like whatever. It's yeah, right. We'll see if they can hold it together and really have a story for that. Then that would be pretty great. I think.
Just, I don't know. It's like I feel like maybe I haven't watched on TV, but like that was good. Like yeah, I think like all the characters got built like really well until
That's
the
one of the.
last couple episodes were like, oh my goodness.
I think it's one of the best shows in decades. Really, like
Yeah.
yeah, really top. And yeah, the question is, can they keep?
How
You know, I think there's a plan. Like so. Right, so many shows they're worried about being renewed, and they kind of write it in some way, and then they have to like make up some new ideas for the next season, which they didn't expect or whatever. So that you can see the seams in those. All right, I was playing around with this a little more. These are just some. I mean, I guess what I was trying to show you the other day was just messing around with text files and kind of trying to get to something that looks reasonable. This doesn't have the title of the book in it, but there are 39 books in this series that I have. There are two more. I don't have those texts. But this is, yeah, power and danger. And then you sort of just start to flip around. So this is the first book. I've made them all so they have the same um, horizontal and vertical limits. You can plot power and danger on the same thing because they separate. Power, as we've sort of seen, right, kind of oscillates around zero or is close to zero. The danger score is in the safe thing. So these are different axes. And then, of course, these are really in some two-dimensional plane. So you have to, how do we do this in a way that doesn't get too confusing? That's the coordinates in two dimensions for another book. But just sort of flipping through, and the idea is, you'll see some people, and it's fair enough, we've sort of done this a little bit ourselves, like stretch them so they're all the same length, like make it 100% of the book. That's okay for some things, but clearly there's you're reading a word, as you read words, that's real time in someone's head. Like you don't want to take War and Peace and squelch that down and be the same as a short story. Yeah, the actual short story read. You can take a short story and inflate it into a movie that's 5 movies long or something, but that's not what I mean. So there are some really different. I mean, I'm just going to sort of flip through these. There are some really different arcs. I mean, and danger. You see the sort of big danger level going up at the end and dropping. It's basically impossible for danger, averaging enough words to go above zero. That's okay. That's the safety bias. Things get better at the end. And there's a fair amount of these things looking somewhat like each other. And when that's true, then, or being reciprocals, then it's like the off-axis stuff is dominating. Right, so this is a drop in power and an increase in danger. So that's like a so that's going back in this part of the Ousiometric kind of plane, which is sort of what we had to start with happy, sad, right? Like this is like good, bad. So this is like a bad a baddening here. Um, and so if they're going up, if power is going up and danger is going down, it's kind of a goodness thing. But it's not all like that. Power's fairly stable through here. The safety danger things pops up and down. This is 12 books in, not as much variation. I'm just going to flip through them. But there's some pretty long, stable pieces. If you randomize this, you can't get this, right? There's no way. This, of course, it's a written thing. This is a real, like, the end is great, right? It's safer, more powerful. This is like, if we just did the emotional arcs as we'd done with Vonnegut, then this would be just like happiness kind of going up at the end, or however we want to refer to that. But this is essential meaning. It's a deeper thing. Yeah. So I do think it will be possible. What I was trying to mess around with as a next piece to add to this panel is like a little, like wind predictions. You ever look at weather forecasts with the wind? Right. It's got little. Let's see what we've got for. This is just a hard thing to do well, I think. So let's see, weather prediction, weather.gov for, I don't know, here, right? Because weather.gov is it's a terrible, look at this site. Awesome. So great. It's so great. They just said 2008 is the best year and we will stop. So forecast, come on, get detailed info. It's terrible. Oh, hazardous weather conditions. What is that? What is it? Cold front? Okay, all right. If you think so. So if there's a weather, it's this one. I mean, with the plane thing, right, you're always looking at wind, right? That's a huge, all the conditions matter. So they make it, how's this? So it's a terrible problem with wind is, a northerly wind means people get confused about this. It's coming from the north, right? So, right? I know where we did. Let's see. Oh, it's interesting. And then we ran into chaos as well. So, where's this? There's a text version. What is it? Do I just click on this thing? Yes. Yeah. So wind direction, right? So south, 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 right? So I kind of wanted to understand the little. See, I'm a little confused by this. Like, so this is you. I should know this, but this is this. If it says south, I would think it's a southerly, right? So it's coming this way. It's going north. Um, and wind prediction is quite hard. We actually had a student for his master's work on that. We were trying to make it like a window meter thing obviously it exists, but just over time, like how does it vary? There are studies of this, and actually wind on in the US has kind of gone down, generally speaking. More trees. Hey, what's going on? That's right. More trees, I think, yeah, which is weird. Yeah, there's a whole. I think it might be a bit of a mystery. There's been a kind of a calming through 50 years. Anyway, so would this be all right? And I don't think it indicates the strength of it, right? Oh no, the strength is that line, isn't it? Oh yeah, that's what it is. Wow, that's weird. So this tells you it's going in this direction, and this is the strength of it. The little. How do you feel about that data visualization? This is for wind, right? So this is a prediction of the wind. This tells you it's going to go that way, and that right angled thing tells you how strong it is. There's then a curve which has got the magnet, So I guess that would be. I know I really kind of hate that thing. That should be like. It'd be just better for what we're trying to do. Like just have an arrow, and then I guess the magnitude. That's sort of plausible. You're trying to plot a two-dimensional derivative in a over time, and that's so. This is just the Discworld novels, the 39 of them. Just kind of put them in a it's a slight. This is an interesting one. I mean, this is a huge dip here, right? So this is it's getting more dangerous, and the power's going down, right? So this is things are getting worse, and then things are suddenly getting better. That's about as close as they get. The Lost Continent is it's actually Australia. It's a whole thing. I guess Pratchett loved going to Australia and had a lot of time, and it's a real homage to. There's like this wizard runs around in like ancient Australia and runs it. Well, it's weird as to when it is, but time is a bit funny. But runs into like some guy called Max, who's got this sort of weird vehicle. Like there's all sorts of. It's probably my least favorite book. It's kind of terrible because it's very on the nose. It has every Australian joke, like drop bears, right? Which is a story that Australians would tell people overseas, like there are drop bears that would land on your head, when you're walking to school or whatever. I don't know what that, or that you would ride a kangaroo to school and just go on about it, just like let that run as a story. You're just like, sure, yeah, yeah, you got your kangaroo, 10 miles each way. I mean, whatever. But anyway, this got a really pronounced thing. So if we plotted the off-axis ones, what I would call dangerous power and safe power, then they might align better for this. This is, I've gone the wrong way. So let's just, and there's sort of a characteristic wavelength in these things, right? There's sort of and we have a student kind of working on this, right? That as you sort of go through them, there's like this sort of typical kinds of scales of action or the story kind of going up and down, whatever it is, these Ousiometric measures going up and down. I mean, you're writing a thing, it takes a while to set it up, go down. So it's not as if we move through this and find like some of them like this. Of course, we're applying some kind of smoothing. So depending on the book, the correlation between these time series really varies. Some of them can look like, the match with each other. They're pretty different. I mean, there's a huge through here. This is this is like things are getting worse, and they kind of stay bad as the compound. So it's not, Anyway, I'm just noodling through this, and this is the last. That's the longest one, 160,000 words. This is sort of a classic end to something, right? Things get really dangerous, and then we're okay. That's the last one. Is that one? Anyway, this is what we're trying to sort of show is, how do you kind of show a two-dimensional time series, much less a three-dimensional one or four-dimensional one. You have the components, but you want to be able to sort of in your brain sort of understand where it's, look at that and understand how it's moving around. And I don't think it's quite not popping that well. Anyway, this is just a natural thing. There's some iterations of scripts, so now there's like a, if you can see this, no. I've got a little settings file thing here. It just does window size, right? So it's a smoothing of 1,000. Make some limits so they're all the same shape. Where to load. So it basically goes and finds all of these books that have a certain shape, naming to them, and then loops through them, finds the ones that are actually books. That's what that's doing. And then calls this this file over here, which is just a new one that I'm sort of building up. And it's MATLAB, but it shouldn't really matter. It's you do a Python thing. And it's going to be the lens narrative, which I sort of talked about the other day, like these, like this sort of thing, right? So there's taken a book and turned it into what I'll call a lens narrative, right? So it's the n-grams number, and this includes punctuation, the word that came through the lens, and these power danger structure scores. we're missing the ones in between there got blocked. We don't have scores for them. I haven't quite looked at this, but I think it's about a third of the words. No, can't be that much. This is things that just matched on lowercase. I mean, it's 38,000 words, which seems to me a lot. Book 37. So that's not. What is wrong with that? Oh, no. Right, so that's 162,000, and so it's about a quarter of the words come through this lens. And you know, we have this sort of thing in front of us. Is this a copyright violation to put that online? Chunks of text is a huge no-no, right? And there have just been some amazing copyright stories over the years. There's a Harvard student who had this huge book deal. She was like about her growing up or whatever, and she just had copied everything from, it all got found out. One person cracked and said, "This is my writing," and then it turned out to be a melange of everyone else's. There's a guy, Jonah Lehrer, who was trying to be the next Malcolm Gladwell and had all these blogs in different special places. He started to copy himself, which was weird. And then he had a whole chapter in a book about Bob Dylan with quotes from Bob Dylan. He made them all up, which is sort of on the nose because Bob Dylan made things, but just very straight. I understand. Well, okay, yeah. Million Little Pieces was another one. That's a while ago. That guy was on Oprah because it's his life story. Like he was a drug addict, terrible things, and he, got out of it. Turned out to be he didn't made it most of it up or something, and then he has to go back on Oprah and apologize.
Yeah, but it's double. You just got double the amount. It's going for twice.
I don't think he's a fan. Yeah, I don't. It's probably not. And then he gets to write about.
Yeah, exactly. Being like, I scam everyone. So you should ask Yoshi if it would be copyright.
Yeah, we should. We need to talk to the dangerous people, right?
Talk to the lawyer.
Always fun. Yeah, that's a good idea. So anyway, this is just kind of you just sort of escalate things a little bit. This is now like a draft of what would become a more complicated thing. I like to just have a simple little it's a little structure in MATLAB settings, and then you can just add more pieces as you decide. Yeah, I mean, you guys would.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, Python has a default thing, right? Yeah, I mean, and it's set up in shell scripts and all those things, and all these kind of shell scripts have a lot of like you put the thing equals something, right? Like there's kind of it's sort of like a bit of and you can change them around the orders or minus R and a number, whatever it is. I mean, they're all good. They're all good things. And so this is, exactly the spirit of that, but it's just a nice little, and you can check to see if the field is there. I mean, you guys have done this, but it just makes it something that's easy to evolve. You don't want to come back here and say, "Oh, I need this and I need this," and then all of your past ones explode. So it's kind of like I said, it's sort of coming along. I mean, and then the question is, do we plot these other time series? But I was thinking it'd be kind of nice to have this little wind thing along the bottom. And we sort of want this thing, but it's different. It's tricky because it's the other thing for the wind thing too, or the arrows that change. It has to be normalized, right? So it's like you kind of have to take the whole book and say, here's the center of it. So relative, how you're moving. Well, it could be just a derivative, right? So anyway, we'll get that right.
Well, do you remember that visualization of the temperature of Earth on its time up in the 3D thing?
Oh my God, yeah.
What if your axis, your third axis now was this time, and then your color could just be X versus Y, and then Z was just time, so that was
Yeah, that's right.
Because like right now, it's like unless you're like watching the animation, it's like hard to.
Yeah, there's the animation thing. So the problem with flat 3D things that just you stick them in a, they just they never work. I've tried so hard and it just doesn't. You know, there's always something. But if you have a thing you can play with, yeah, that would be super cool. That was that visualization was pretty good, right? Like it's going along well, and you're like, okay, yeah, now it's getting sad. Like it had impact. But then when they went, I'm like, it's good, nice little kicker at the end because it had that feel to it, so you could really get a sense. That would be. Hmm. I mean, we can. Let's try that right now. I'll do a terrible one. Okay, so I've got one sitting in here, and I think it's that last one. Okay, it doesn't matter which book it is, but it is this. Okay, it is this time series, right? Okay, so which is some of them are more or less they seem somewhat decoupled, so it's an interesting one. So we could do plot. I think it's plot three, isn't it? Why it would be so we want the okay. We'll do time axis like that, and then it's going to be just this. Yes, and I think if we just make it, this will be a mess. This is just a raw mess. Figure 37. We'll make it. Oh no! Trouble. Bad computer. God, it's so distressing. Okay, so this is. Oh, I need it. There's a sort of there's a transient at the start, which is no good. So let me get rid of that. Because the filter comes along and runs like it starts before the time series, so it just goes like this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the first part is it's basically pads it with zeros and then goes blue, which is very upsetting. I think. Come on, computer. Wow, I've lost my mouse. My mouse has ceased to exist as a thing. Where is it?
It's on the.
Oh, the script. I did. Sorry, I didn't see that. Unbelievably, because the touchpad thing, the touch bar, it's sitting there with this giant thing. It's like basically destroy the universe. Do not destroy the universe. Two options, and they're big bars. I know. I'm sure. Forgive me if it was, but wings fall off. This is a little rough, but Larson, Gary Larson. It's not a good one for you to have at work, I guess. But what instigates a disaster? Yeah.
All our CMIs put little like tape over buttons in our planes that said like chemtrails
That's so great.
Imagine the trouble you could do there, like just a single label maker. Like that. I thought it was a lot of people like
We found it. I haven't looked at this for a while. This is great. Yeah, I didn't realize it had like other options in there, but that's basically right. All right. Wow. Three.
Especially if you could like spin it and there was color to it. Because like another way you can visualize it, maybe it'd be like a ribbon plot where each like ribbon is like an axis of one of the emotions, but then it would go like flat or whatever, while like another ribbon was like active. Right. You wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't see as much of like the interactions. Yeah.
Okay, so if you roll it this way, as you roll it around, you're going to see power and right. Mm. So we could make it unfold, yeah, or at least have it. What you could have is the background thing and have a little thing run along it.
Right. To give people like a choice. Well, it'd be like the done you put on like this event happening.
That's right. And I mean, what I was thinking is you have it like run along like this, and it could be like a little segment, kind of being highlighted, and you have a word shift kind of moving up and down, saying like, why is it there or this way or that way? Or, yeah.
It's too bad that you can't publish like dynamic images like that. And
No, it is garbage, and we tend to, that's we kind of build these instruments. I think we're more comfortable. What's that?
you still have your own archive on the story apps. And it's just like
Well,
you put your own like papers up there, like hunting grounds, and then you get everything like
well,
interactive.
well. Our papers for many years we've had this thing where we have online, and UVM killed our website. So it's still they all still exist. We've been even now they've sort of come in and out of existence a little bit, but we're setting everything up properly on Silk. Too much data apparently, but God damn it. Online appendices. So we always in our papers we say the papers online appendices, which are not the journals ones, right, or whatever, because the journals they can all go to help. But so we have obviously our thing will vanish into the ether at some point, I suppose. But these online appendices are meaningful things, and some of them have really clear visualization pieces built in. Like there's
You need a story lab engineering block. It's just like
did something get revealed that I should? So this is the allotaxonometry. I mean, that's going to hit you in the head if you don't know what's going on. But it's like it's a little, it's a place to put visualization things. Here's how it works. Blah blah blah. I think each one has its own. Like the code one might have a different one. Yeah, it's basketball. I think. Yeah, that's cool. That's total points, and it's from season to season. You kind of see how they move around. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a flipbook video. But of course, yeah, hedonimeter and those sorts of things. Yeah, and just to say, I sort of thought for a long time papers should be apps. It's a lot. It's a lot, and whether they remain and don't explode into flames, which is sort of the long history of the web. I mean, everything with Flash in it. I mean, there were people made beautiful things, right? I mean, really, like just the. I mean, and things like the New York Times had amazing things, just really powerful visualizations that are just gone. Let me see. One of my favorite ones was Super Bowl Pittsburgh. We need to find that. Um, Visualization. I'm putting the wrong things. Just at the start, I mentioned. Yeah, yeah. It's a shame.
schedule something with a cashier website on it. Not one archive, but a medium article that has something like section that you
I don't know.
this that divided through like a shot.
Oh my God. Google's brought up. Google's. I've searched for Twitter and Google's brought up 1979. God damn it. Which one? This one? Uh, oh, this thing. Yeah. What was this? This is a weird one. Yeah. This is. They made time go this way. It's a flat circle, man. That's from what is it? True Detective or something? What was that show that had? Yeah, it was good.
I like how it's like spinning out of control, right?
I just, I mean, just time, right? Just keep it over here. Like we could go up in the air or down. That's a problem too. But wow, yeah. So that's just rage. We used to have it, and unfortunately, I think it just we couldn't run it anymore. But it's so great because it's basically the US, and it runs a little thing, and the scores you see what the scores are, right? And in the game, and that was it was the Cardinals versus the Steelers. It was an interesting game, like back and forth. Um, and yes, yeah, and you just see like the swell of people yelling, like basically on Twitter, yelling kind of names of players, or go, or this was before emojis, so like emoticons, or and just the Steelers, like they go, and ads as well. Like I remember Hulu kind of popping up. It was a long time ago. It was really good, but it was inspirational. It was like, okay, we like this. The crazy amount of what? Like, oh yeah, people really worked hard on those. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, there's a fair amount of like circling around, right? Like there's like winding through spaces. I mean, we saw it in different ways. God, this is a lot. Huh.
It is really cool as it goes
That's the thing. This is a story, right? This object is a story, and it's a richer object than just the up and downs of happiness, the Vonnegut one. So there's a whole categorization of stories. Like if we get enough novels together that we curate them, we could compare them like this, which would be another step. That would be a
like
bigger thing.
you could do like if your window was like rectangular, so you have your window of words be like an X or Y or whatever, and then like each like window can have its own like heat map essentially, and then your time series would be like the peak or the minimum of like that window. It's like what we do for battery packs. It's like we want to see like the whole battery pack at like a certain period of time, but we also want to see like the peak or the minimum of a certain like cell in that battery pack.
Okay.
Time series of like the maximum in
Right.
any cell in that like window essentially. Which I think is like similar.
Yeah. Just to say, I mean, what it's a simple um, filter, which is just a block filter, which is just averaging. And of course, as you make that filter wider, then it smooths this out. It would sort of, it would tighten this thing up. You get the roughness would go out of it, but you'd still hope, you'd still kind of basically see. That's the point. You'd still see these shapes. I mean, did this in 2014 with Moby Dick and stuff, right? It would start to smooth out, but those same. What you want is that filter shouldn't change too much for a while. Obviously, if the filter is like the whole thing and you just get an average, it's no good. If there's no filter and you've just got, the word scores, it's a mess, just static, it's just noise. But hopefully there's sort of a good range of smoothing for which this, and we saw this for Twitter, for which there's sort of a similar looking thing, right? There's some robustness to it. But the fact that we have this big tunable thing is interesting. So that's fun, isn't it? It can be so hard to like here. You're like, is this further away? Like, damn. You sort of need a cylinder around it to kind of see where it is. Uh, right? So there's something. Um, you color grading could give you tone. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you just give you the depth field, like if one end is really light and the other is really dark, and there's some bright color between, it's really easy to see.
If we could color the compass in a way that was meaningful, I'm not. The perceptually, what is it? Perceptually accurate, or what? It's not the right word. Like the magma one that I like to use. Um, what's the word? when you go through the scale, your brain does the right thing and thinks, oh, this is a linear, it interpolates it linearly. Perceptually uniform color maps. What we need is one that goes around and bites its tail, an Ouroboros version. That's possible, because then that would help you a little bit. Like, you can see this as extreme in some way, but we'd like to know that that's, what is that? So this is flattening it and taking time out would be kind of there, I think. Right. Right. And I've lost my tick marks there. Yeah, so this, I think that's right. So this is power danger out here. This is, when things are getting a little intense, hairy. I mean, the other, there are a lot of beautiful terms that we have. Like, I think I said this in talks ages ago, but like, what's the story? Like, what's the story with this thing? It can be used in all sorts of ways. Like, hey, what's the story? Like, it could be polite. It could be what's the, like, or and you say someone's lost the plot. They've lost the thread. It's a thread. Because it's we have that in our heads. I mean, there are Twitter threads, I suppose, but even Twitter threads the right thing. That's good. Yeah. Yarn, does yarn come from that? When you say tell a yarn, what do you think? Were you saying something about this?
I was just asking that x-axis, the way it's oriented right now, like the exponential scale of 0 to 16.
Yeah, so this is time, narrative time, so this is 160,000 words. Yeah. And I did a simple thing where I actually filtered the narrative time points of the 1 gram. So this is, it's 1,000 words are averaged and they're placed in the middle of the time points.
Well, you can just like a simple scheme where like if something is increasing around the axis, it just gets more like intense of a color, then you know that like when they mix that like
further away from the center. Yeah. And this in real, so doing it, so there's this where you have the book, there's also like what's happening in the world in real time, which is another thing, and I think we struggle with this pretty badly. But because then you'd want to have some adaptive thing that's telling you like, I mean, we do it, right? Like the color map for heat, for temperature, I think in Australia they added purple at some point because, there was just like, we can't, whatever it was, red, like red was starting to occupy too much of a band because it was the upper limit. So it's like, okay, we need to. So you need to have room to kind of, as something's evolving, to kind of cope with that. But if you have the whole thing in there, then you say, all right, the average is this. I'm going to center it. I know what the limits are. I can put a cylinder around it, and we can kind of look at it like that. That's an important kind of thing to do. But there is also just this unfolding thing. It's super interesting. Okay, I'm going to slowly start working through this thing which I've called computational history. There's a lot in here, and it is it's sort of the reason that all the allotaxonometry stuff. I mean, some of the stuff, stuff that I've presented here, which is work we've created, is in part because of our group, but also in part because of this course, right? Like, just it's all connected together, and I'm, build this material where I start talking about, all right, like I think Simon's model is really important, right? This is ages ago. Rich get richer. Okay, so I'm going to like build a thing around that, and we're going to see how he did it. Probably 30 other people helped him, but that's not, and like we'll go through it. That's and then this is all around Zipf's law, and there's lots of arguments about that. And so just over time, it sort of slowly dawns on you if you spend alone. If it's a problem with being stupid, but you spend a lot of time looking at something, and eventually things kind of open up, right? And so that's been a real. I didn't expect that from developing these courses, but I don't know what I expected. But anyway, this is part of it. Oh, I know what's wrong. That needs to be opened again. Adobe's such a weird beast of a thing. It really gets sad. Okay. Okay. This guy we've had him for 6 years now. This little beast. We adopted him.
I think bottom right picture easily my favorite.
That is the first one. Amy took that. She just turned around and is like, "It's garlic," and she just nailed it. Such a cat. It's amazing. Um, that's his 6 year thing. This is where he's been compared to a rutabaga. Um, I have a little sign that says "Mind the cat." But yeah, look at this beast. Look at this. Yeah, this is several hours after he broke a plate that he pulled off. There's a lot of snuggling with humans. When I'm lying, if I'm lying in bed, he'll come and put his head here and sleep. Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable. Ridiculous.
It's like a dog. It's like 40 pounds.
Yeah, there it is.
And when you're sitting on the couch,
He wants to be a cushion.
he lays across the back of your shoulder. It's crazy.
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
And then if you lean back, he gets mad at you and goes, why don't put your head on me? This is my comfort anyway.
It's quick, and people are like, animals don't have emotion, like all this sort of, right? It's a huge gradation. It's just so. Anyways, many of them are him having a good time, but he's on his. There are photos of him there. Anyway, it's been a fun thing. Oh yeah, getting some treats. Yeah. Anyway, he's doing well, but 6 years. Yeah, it's good. Um, okay, so I've talked about fame in parks, right? So it's going to come back again, but this is going to be a little bit of a different thing. We'll see how much I can jump through some of this, I think. Okay, so rank, right? We talked a lot about it. Fame by rank. This is the paper one. We don't have to go through some of these. Story's a big deal. I've emphasized this. Okay. Oh my God. Oh wow. So we went through. Oh no, don't do that. That's gonna blow up. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah. So some of this is just okay. So we had Music Lab, right? Which shows fate does not exist, which is a pretty big result, right? Like so. Anyway, all right. So and yeah, could upset some people, but that was experiments. We did get 100,000 people involved, which was a big deal. Then would still be impressive, I think. But we're looking at data. So there are a couple of papers that kind of came out of this work, and the first and led to Story Wrangler in particular. But the first was just like we're going to measure things really well about how often whatever it is being talked about. The first one is going to be about it's actually a political science thing, just how much the extent to which people who are running for president, right? So the Democratic or Republican candidates, and then whoever becomes president, how much they talked about, and then we're going to bench. So what do you benchmark that against? So it turns out function words and so the of and they actually become good anchors to sort of look at, and we also chose countries, right? So countries. It's English Twitter, and we're going to say, all right, this is it's for a particular year, 2018. I've got a big list of countries, whatever, about 200, and maybe territories and things. We're going to look through and see how often what are their ranks, right? And give an anchor for things. So America's like just the word America is about 1,000th, I think, typically. Kiribati is like a millionth, like a rank of a million. So that's going to be a comparison, and then I truly personally discovered BTS through looking at tweets and like looking at zip distributions from tweets.
It's a crazy way to discover.
It's the weirdest thing. And it was BTS underscore TWT. Like what is this handle? And then I find it and I look through it and I'm like, okay, this is really serious. This may be 2018, I guess, and there's a little bit of a struggle where you're thinking, well, I guess this is just like this doesn't matter. Like this is sort of just like somehow maybe we should try to remove it or something, like for the analyses, like but it's Twitter is Twitter, right? So it's sort of like this is what it is, bots and all essentially. Like you just have to. I think it's important to describe what it is rather than try to manufacture some variant for yourself. Uh, so it's also, I discovered the Jonas Brothers broke up like 5 years earlier because I was looking at time series of handles from our original Lab MT one, and we had maybe 10 handles in that. Like Lady Gaga was in there. There was a couple of others. These are people who were Justin Bieber, who were on Twitter in 2009, say, and were being talked about a lot. But yeah, the Jonas Brothers, like their Twitter on story, like their mentions just go, but then they came back up. So it's kind of weird. Yeah. So and then we made this potosometer thing with a smorgas dashboard, which I could we'll maybe get to look at that. We've kind of parked it after at the moment. Okay. No, I do not want to do that. Okay.
There's a slide with a giant image of BTS.
Well, I mean, they have political power. They have political power if they want to. If they want to. So, like, you would not want. So their fandom is called BTS Army, right? You would not want them to hate you, like to perceive that you have.
Well, like BTS.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They're good. They seem to be a very joyful, good group. But I mean, I'm just sort of saying, you don't want.
K-pop industry is really rough.
Well, and there is the reality, like yeah, and so the history of it too is like South Korea decided we're going to put a lot of money into cultural stuff in the 1990s. Like we need to have more of our stuff out there and or to promote it. So they just put money into, you know, I think television and movies, like to that part of the industry.
30 years later, you're seeing like a giant
Unbelievable.
impact of
I mean, Parasite won
Parasite,
best
Squid Game was like the most
Squid
popular
Game's huge.
television show on
Yeah.
Netflix for a while.
Yeah.
BTS is probably worth listening to.
BTS is gigantic. We get people saying, I don't know what BTS is. This doesn't make any sense. Like, yes, but there's the world. And it doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't matter what you think. It's like saying the Beatles. I've never heard of the Beatles in the 1960s.
Yeah, it's like a little gas.
And people were like that. I don't know who they are. And there's like, largely women just screaming themselves in half, like on tarmacs, like in enormous numbers. Yeah, I've never heard of them. It doesn't matter. I don't care about this. It's just insane to me when people who study social phenomena will bring themselves into it. You are irrelevant, especially if you're a professor type person. You are super irrelevant because you're just like not. Yeah. Well, the Grateful Dead, right? I mean, that was people's lives, right? It was just a good. So Trump actually took on a little bit of that because there are people who who would go to every one of his rallies, like drive around the country. They still do it, like.
The good liars, they're called. It's just like they interview people and some of the stuff that like
Yeah, it's a lot.
See, how do you believe that?
It's a really good question. Right? So this is what because they really believe it. So there is, there are stories have come in. There's some sort of evidence presented, like right, and you in your mind decide like this is the truth versus this other one. I mean, a lot of it works from demonization, right? So that the Hillary Clinton is a evil, lying witch person. CNN is evil. New York Times is evil. New York Times is not very good actually, but like like that they are trying to destroy us, right? So once you've got that kind of baked in, then you can start to believe some. I mean, it's still hard. But this is how I can kind of handle it, because it's still hard to imagine like Pizzagate,
I forgot about that. That's like the first, the tune on bass.
It's pretty good. Yeah. That one really worked. It really worked. It's also after the 2016 election. It's not really something that's been used before. Also, the term fake news was not before that. Like it starts to take off after the election a little bit, and then gets turned around. And Trump sees it and he uses it. It's good. It's very powerful.
And the Pizzagate thing was like one of the things that was proven to be false. So like
they don't have a basement.
It's like you have a basement on this property,
right? Comet ping pong, right? Yeah. But so you say that, you report that on TV, you're lying too, right? So like, yes, it has a basement. Like 15 floors. I've seen the schematic. Whatever. Like, I didn't know. I totally made that. But like you can imagine, like someone. I've got the schematics here, like and they were hidden or whatever, and it got smuggled out. You, so it doesn't matter what someone will say because they are known to be lying to you, and the great power there you have, I think, is now and then you can say, oh, they got it right this time. Like the New York Times hates me and always lies about me, but this one they got right. So you really get control over the narrative. It's fantastic. Um, yeah. So who this is we'll kind of come back to this. This is a raw fame thing. I wish I wouldn't do that. Okay. Um, this is part of the potentiometer thing. This is just simply how much is being talked about. There's a particular lens on. It's all of Twitter actually lowercased, and then a lot of stuff taken out, right? So emojis or whatever, punctuation. So in this, yes, and then in Story Wrangler you can switch off replies, and Hedonemy you can switch them off as well, and it's important to do that, right? And it's I mean, Twitter's problematic, but having the retweet structure for all its problems, I suppose, does allow us to get this measure of popularity, right? Like how much is this thing being amplified? So you can turn that off. You can kind of turn off the social contagion thing, sort of, and see what the tweets that people have kind of, or what we kind of called organic tweets. It might be from bots, but these are tweets that are the original tweets. When you get 10% of Twitter, the weird thing too is, like, we might get 1 in 10 of like someone like Trump or Biden's original tweets. We won't, right? Because it's 10%. But you'll get it because of the retweets. You get a bazillion retweets. So yeah, yeah. So you get what's amplified, and in those things, and each one of those is buried. Is the retweet is buried? We get 10% of retweets, but that estimate becomes very quickly very very strong, right? This is Trump. So we're going to come back to this a little bit. I just want to dig in. I mean, went over this a lot, just trying to do this well. It's nothing more than describing things based on this data set. It's day scale. As I said, we get all of Twitter. We take only, Latin character words, get rid of a bunch of stuff. Handles are in there. So, at BTS is in there. And after a while, I talked about how we might want to anchor things. This is God, right? So God is sort of a function word because it's just used so much, right? And God is typically, it doesn't, I'll show you a figure, but it on a day scale, it does not vary much. It's usually around 300 in rank.
It basically is a function word if you think about all like oh my God.
Yeah.
God, like you use this expression.
Right. OMG, yeah. So it's really, and it's useful because, then it's a little bit of fun. It's like you talked about more than God, right? So this is like the Beatles being talked about more than Jesus and stuff like that. But it's something to, well, so this is Trump, right? So this is above. Well, and in this year, 2020, which was, the just unbelievable year, he was, so I define this as Ultrafame. If you talked about, it's arbitrary, but if your rank is for words rank is above this median for God, which is about 300, 302 or whatever, then it's ultra famous.
BTS is always up there, right?
Yeah. So right. Look at Trump. Mostly here, and then this is every day, weekends, whatever. This 2020 was above. Was it ultra famous the whole time? This is still true here. There's the election. That's January 6th. This is, trying to get, where are we now? So that's the election. That's when he got COVID, actually. Yeah, that's about here. And then this is, so he's still, like Trump will still be talked about. And this is the second impeachment. But has dropped down, but is still, really high. This is still 1,000. It's still like equivalent to America. Biden, like this is not atypical of someone sort of going towards, yeah, there's ups and downs, there's election, not elections. There's this is the that would be that first debate where Trump would later be, found to have COVID. So that's a spike for him. He wins the election, but it drops down and is actually kind of similar to Trump now, right? So this is unusual. Okay, so BTS, nobody expects K-pop, and this is from now 3 years ago, but it's like people were sort of in the US writing like K-pop is kind of a big thing, and it kind of they just to go back to this investment by South Korea. This is really obviously changed their cultural output. I mean, now they're globally a global brand, or South Korea is in general, and it's had a sizable effect on the GDP, and the music industry of the world has been affected by K-pop's rise. BTS is number one, but there are a couple others in there that are just huge. Twice is the girl band. Pretty good stuff. It's great. Yeah. Oh, like the biggest girl band. Capital letters. I've listened to it twice actually. I like it a lot. But I mean, but it is. I mean, like you look on the Wikipedia page for them. I remember doing this sort of to your point before. Like, there's a thing to say, who are the members? I think there might be 9 people in it, right? And then there are these little, like when they're in, maybe they're out for a little while, and there's like little spaces, and then the little key says, for mental health reasons. Like there, and it's just there, but there are other sort of terrible stories that have kind of come out in K-pop. It's a lot of money, right? There's a lot of money. Yeah, yeah. I mean, their whole, wow. I mean, how they present, is kind of amazing. And I think 7 in BTS, which gives you a sort of a rich, it's like Friends or whatever, like a lot of shows where there are enough characters or community with whom you might be able to identify your friends as, my friend is Chang, obviously, or whatever, they give you archetypes to kind of enjoy.
They're all some sort of characters that, like, everything's like so choreographed.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, for BTS. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like it's very right, right, right. Yeah, which I'm sure is tough. I mean, when you see some of these things. All right, so this is a little detailed. These are just simply these are ranks of individual words. So I've chosen different ones here. So instead of Clinton, it's Hillary because that was the dominant 1 gram that refers to her specifically. Trump will include other Trumps and just the word Trump, but when you look through, it's pretty clear it's dominant. Obviously, there's some more Bidens and there's a Cindy McCain and maybe Michelle Obama, but these are dominantly refer to the presidential candidates. And so down here is this is BTS. That's not a dollar sign, it's just a dash. That's their Twitter handle. And so you see they don't exist, 2013, and then just climb up, like this is exponential. This is a log scale. This is just time. They climb up and up and up. And that high point there, they're ranked third. This is 1. This is rank 1. So that's 3 on that day. It was a music awards day, and they just went. The army, right, went berserk. So they have stayed. Here's the God thing, right? They were above that. They were ultra famous for a long time. They've come down a little bit, but this is just. I mean, and we just sort of had to put it in there, right? Just like this is just how this. There's nothing else has been up here, except Trump. So if you look at Obama, talked about enormously. The volume of Twitter has changed over time, so it's a different kind of thing to compete with. But talked about enormously. I think had maybe a high of 12 or something on the day he was first elected, right? So, the 12th ranked word. It's just that Obama is everywhere. It's like the and of and stuff like that. You see, it comes back up for re-election. Comes back up a little bit again around the 2016 one. What's interesting is through Trump's term, Obama's talked about a lot, but then gone. Right? And you see that for Clinton as well. Hillary's sort of going down, It's sort of, this is the character, the bête noir sort of character, and then it's just gone. Um, Biden, you know, sort of goes down. Really, this is pretty low, and I'll sort of give you some more handles on how low it is. But these are pretty low through here, and then, this is getting towards the election that grows. The spike is really just the election, and then some of the, this is actually Afghanistan, I think, as well. He gets talked about around the pullout of Afghanistan, which correlates with his opinion poll kind of going down. I should show this other figure too. Let me. I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, so it's Oscar Wilde is what I'm kind of appealing to. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. Okay, I want to show these graphs too. Maybe they're in my slides, but I think I might have forgot. This is early on in the Democratic primaries. So a lot of people competing, as is always the case. They're all gone now, and you sort of forget about it. But Marianne Williamson, do you remember these names? She was also a new agey person. So this is from surveys like just awareness. Do you recognize their name? Do you just recognize them? So Biden, of course, is like close to 100. Bernie Sanders, close to 100. These are different. The vertical is different polls, right? So for the same character. So Biden has a few in here. And then this is favorability. So do you know them and do you like them? And early on, it's basically that governs a lot. Just knowing they exist dictates whether you kind of have a favorable opinion of them, which is pretty interesting. So awareness is the big thing for a lot of campaigns, right? So cancer campaigns, like Lance Armstrong, before he was revealed to be this traitor, it was actually a bit of a joke. Like his nickname, in some ways, in some circles, was awareness. We would just call him awareness, right? Because it's just like, but it's sort of right for campaigns to push on that, to just so people just know who you are, because you get a lot from that. And of course, this is early on, it sort of unfolds, and then Biden wins, and then this wouldn't work so well. This is pretty bad. A lot of people knew Bill de Blasio, but he was not. No one likes him. So this is if you're running that campaign, this is.
You're like, no, we're not winning.
Yeah, but if you're Buttigieg, you're just like, any of these characters, you're like, well, we need more people to know who we are. We need to be talked about more. I need to be on shows. I need to be trotted out.
If you're Bernie, you're like, okay, this is very frustrating. You're like, this is really getting annoying
now. What can you expect of people? But people should not hopefully understand, whatever you think about, like, he is pretty rock solid, right? Like, this is, he's not, trying to figure out what other people like or whatever, it's like,
yeah, I mean, it's just what it is. Like,
this is it. But every 20, 30, 40 years, which is very different to a lot of politicians who are like, what do you think? So that's a big thing. But once you're famous, and so here's the example of people who are all famous. These are the presidents. So going back to FDR, once you're famous, then, and this is Gallup polls, then you can go all over the place, right? And FDR was generally, for the Gallup polls that existed, generally very favorable. This is the New Deal, and then of course the war. So in that context, Truman all over the place. I mean, this is 20 to 90, like, so it's very reactive, like whatever, gas prices are up or something's up, I'm mad. Like, you don't fundamentally like them. Uncertainty, fear, yeah, sure. I like Ike. None of us remember this. That was his campaign. I like Ike. My father-in-law has this memory of him, sort of, because Eisenhower's a pretty solid character, right? He's like started to propose. They're worried about the Russians. Was proposing maybe kids go to school on Saturday as well, because we need to keep up with the. It just remembers that news, like the front page or something, just like just horrified. Obviously, kids couldn't vote, so I suppose that was okay. But yeah, and then Kennedy, who only has 3 years in, but was generally regarded as favorable. Johnson's going to be, you can see this is down to 30. He made decisions that were tough decisions politically in his time. Tricky Dicky never, never really bottoms out, right? Like if you look at it over time, even when he gets in the helicopter and leaves, it's not, it's not, yeah. Uh, and so, you see, most of these have pretty big variations, but it's started to close down. Like G.W. Bush, if you look at the time series for Bush, though, it is sort of here. There's 9/11. He goes to 90. He goes to 90%, like boom, straight away. And then the rest of his what turns into 8 years, is basically a decline. So this is a histogram, but it's really collapsing something that's like, oh, he's okay, and then just a long decline down to from 90 to 20 over 8 years, which is extraordinary. Obama, up and down, but it's a little more close. And then Trump is really remarkable. It's a really different thing. Trump is complete. This is much more about character and whose side you're on. It's not about like what's happening. Yeah, president's very unfairly, but you kind of understand it. Like the economy goes south, they're like, that's their fault.
See what you mean though, because it's literally just like 35 to 45.
Oh yeah, it never changed. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but if you just took like,
and it's a bulge, right? Like it's really like it's got that thing, but it's like 538 plot of this thing. It was just never. And I think that's happening a little bit more with Biden too now. Like it's very set. People are really like, I just don't like them fundamentally, or I like them fundamentally, and that's it. Nothing they can do, nothing that happens will change it, which is incredible. You go back to George W. Bush, right? I mean, 9/11. This is a really, it's a right, very clear, terrible thing that happens to, the U.S. And people are like, boom, doesn't matter which side they're on, basically. Like we're unified, and as I said, it goes down, but it takes, it's not like it goes down the next day or like 2 days, 2 weeks later. It's a slow evaporation. So to the extent that eventually Republicans really.
like the war in Ukraine is doing a little bit for NATO. The general perception of NATO worldwide is becoming more like
but it's interesting how that's unfolding because like I think Zelensky's maintaining, like people think well of him, but Europe as well though. I'm not sure about Europe. France, like what, like there are horrible things happen. I mean, I think it's clear, right? That we have that. You still get articles like, "Have there been war crimes?" So and it's just unfolding. Yes, I mean, we don't know quite the extent, like the support that goes in. That's kind of quiet and underground, and training of Ukrainian troops that's happened in the past, which is really meaningful and substantive. But on the other hand, it's still like, wow, you gotta, yeah. Well, Finland seems to be, and Sweden seem to be more. I mean, within their countries, favorable towards joining. Um, yeah, the Finns have some history with Russia, right? Wow. Um, you know this, right? What's the name? The White Ghost, the Winter. What's he called? The Winter. There's one character too, who's allegedly a sniper may have. The claim is that he killed 500 Russians. It's the White Ghost. Yeah, yeah, very patiently shot Russians. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, biathlon is in the Winter Olympics for basically to protect us against Russia. Like that. That's what it was about. I mean, they're also good at it, but I mean, it's like that's it is a modern pentathlon is a war thing as well, right? So it's a very strange one.
Having to go fight Russia, it's just that team.
Gotta get your skates.
Here, give us those guns. Here, take these ones.
So, yeah, no, the Finns have a proud thing. Norway has the border at the top, right? Which is you know this, right? But it's funny, right? Norway comes around, gets all that coast, and then hits Russia. What's weird to me is you can walk through one country from Norway and be in North Korea, which is weird. It's Russia, and that's a big walk. But in terms of connectivity, it's kind of odd.
That's so crazy.
Right? Norway, Russia, North Korea.
Yeah, like geographically in the brain, you just don't want that to be the case between Norway and
It's just weird.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Russia and China touch a lot of countries too. It's like I connect have borders with. Look, I know I went on to this, but this is all this is to say like being talked about matters. You know, this is a fair thing from Oscar Wilde, right? But once everyone knows you, then it can start to kind of, and it can really go south, obviously. Like,
pretty famous.
yeah, right. You know, it's New York, so he's going to get talked about a lot. But it can be, but this is a different space now. Let me see about. We've got our Nate Silver, who's always trying to say things, but so this is, you know, so this is Biden, and that's basically, I think, pulling out of Afghanistan. That switches. This is this is based on a lot of polls. They're not doing anything. They kind of rank them, or they have little adjustments. You can actually, I think, real clear politics does it. So you basically just add up polls and you get a similar looking thing. Like, you know, it downgrade it. 538 says, you know, there's a good poll, bad poll, or they adjust it or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. These are always interesting. These are, let me do 8 years. Yeah, so this is the easiest place to get this. So you see Biden has gone down, he's in green, has gone down. And this is Trump, started a bit below 50, but just, right, really very little deviation. Obama's kind of, you know, up and down a bit, never really, no great highs, no great lows. And this is George W. Bush, right? That's Iraq. That's you know, this is the 9/11, and then you can't really even see the response in here. It's still there, but this is the weapons of mass destruction, total garbage thing that the New York Times actually bought. Yeah, mission accomplished. I'm not sure where that is in this one, but he landed in a plane. Is that what he did too? Like he was in but he came down on like a like a fighter pilot plane. That seems perilous. It was we won. Like we beat Iraq and Afghanistan. Like we won. But it's we'd have to look it up. But it was a. I'm sure you've seen any number of things, showboating kind of things in running or whatever, where someone like eases up, or NFL. You know, like they're running for a touchdown and they start to like whatever, and the ball falls out and they trip on it and break their leg. You know, like it's it's hilarious, right? Um, yeah, the showboating. So it was a just ridiculous thing to do. But there was a huge banner that said "Mission Accomplished," and it was on an aircraft character, and it was all very, you know, rah rah. Um, anyway, but because of that mission accomplished thing, this is actually when the war against uh, Afghanistan and Iraq ends. This is in 2021, 2021, right? And it's Biden who takes the hit for it. People are not happy about it. But you see, yeah. So Clinton, interestingly enough, right? He sort of just goes through here. The impeachment doesn't hurt him with Monica Lewinsky. If anything, he's as popular as ever in that last part. Um, but yeah, most of them have more sort of, you know, and there's less resolution. Most of them have more jagged stuff. This is Nixon gets reelected, and then, you know, not such, we're in trouble. Of course, what they did relatively is doesn't really. This is Iran Contra. No, and he also just said, "All right, I'm a bad guy. I resign." But like it was, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I think it was a different.
Which
Is that? I think that. No, I think that's true.
I think that being like
Yeah.
stand up and being like, yeah, we should have done that without everybody.
Fox was born out of the time with Nixon. With Roger Ailes was I think, a speechwriter for Nixon, and said we need our own channel, and so that was it.
Yeah.
So success.
He
Success.
famously like recorded every conversation in the White House.
Right. 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 That That was a problem later on. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it recorded anything else like just incredible racism and whatever, that bigotry and stuff. So, yeah, not a great idea. Anyway, so these are interesting time series. They're a little more complicated, right? But you see, again, Trump's one is just really flatlining. Biden has moved more than Trump did, but now seems kind of stuck in this second place. I did want to go to that. I think that's useful. Let me just finish talking about this a little bit and come back to it. But Hillary Clinton down here. This is pretty low. It's not surprising that many of their lows occur around things like Christmas, because there's just this you're getting pushed out by people saying simple things about that date. But yeah, she's not super talked about, and of course, going back into the 1990s is a big effort to demonize her, and it sticks. Crooked Hillary is one that gets used here, but she's been demonized way before. So I will say, like personally, I think unfortunately a difficult choice to make to present for the Democrats, because it's very vulnerable to the narrative had been established. This is McCain, so super talked about here, and then kind of down. These ones are where he said things about Trump, and then his death as well. Basically, is where he spikes. Romney really goes back into the backwaters. Occasionally spikes, and again, it's when he says something about Trump, like he's unhappy with Trump. What's that? I mean, sure. Yeah, but you'll have no chance. Have no chance. Yeah, yeah. I have no.
That'd be great. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I think Romney will get 1%. I mean, it's just like there's just one. Eat him alive. But let's. So here's God, really static, right? And this is taking away the log scale. This is just rank, one, just a normal linear scale. And this is Trump compared to Obama. So Trump, it's harder to see here, but this is a linear scale now, this thing goes down to 1,000,000. Trump is just talked about every day, all the time. And Obama is much more like, like stuff happens in the world, the president did a thing, next day we don't have to talk about it. This is I've put them together from when they were first elected, right? So this is Obama gets reelected, so he's talked about more, and then everyone's like goes back to like what's on TV, or whatever, right? But Trump is still talked about here. Finally, he's gone from there's I guess Biden's inaugurated, right? And it drops down here, but it's still up. But just here's the long arc of Trump, and in this paper we kind of go through, and they're not annotated here, but we sort of detail what happened. This is like Miss Universe kind of stuff back here. This is the build-up where people think he might run in 2012. So he's being talked about here. And this is the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So if you remember or know about this, right, so he goes to that dinner. It's this old tradition where journalists come and the president says something. They usually have a comedian. In this case, it was, what's his name? He has a late night show. Seth Meyers, thank you. So they both have some things, and just kind of out there, Obama just goes at Trump, just ridicules him. You really should look this up, because this is important. He ridicules him. Trump is clearly there in the audience, like not happy. This is, it's humiliated. He's humiliated, which is what he, so he's absolutely, dragged by the current president, who, because back here has been all the birther stuff. Trump led the birther, right? So that's also part of what's in here. Trump being talked about, because he's like, Obama was born in Kenya. He has a little tick, Trump, where he says, in 2 weeks, it's going to happen in 2 weeks. Because I think everyone forgets everything in 2 weeks, but you will say that a lot. You'll say that in 2 weeks' time, this will happen. And one of his things was he had people in Hawaii, they're finding things you won't believe about Obama's birth certificate, and we'll have it in 2 weeks. This is 2000 and yeah, that's what you want. It's in 2012. So 2 weeks after that dinner, which is this, it's pretty famous for him. He says he's not going to run. So that's his next spark. So he kind of goes down, and this is pretty low for Trump here. He's not really talked about around the election again, but this is when he goes down the elevator, or the escalator, I should say, in Trump Towers. That spike there in one day just went, and then it's up and up and up and up and up. Gets elected. It's really what's interesting. The highest day for Hillary is the day of the election. The highest day for Trump is the day after, because it's decided right at the end of the day, relatively. So there's this like she's going to win, and then Trump won, and then he's just talked about, just he's just, at least, and this is the lens of Twitter, he's just there all the time. I know it's time to do. So we'll dig into this all, because what happened in here, right? There's North Korea, there are Boy Scouts, there are hurricanes, there are all sorts of things. Like, how do you remember what happened? I mean, you can do reconstruction of timeline. People can do it by hand, but we're going to do a computational timeline reconstruction of everything. Where is coronavirus in here? Like, it's in there. Where is Ukraine? Where is, right? Because he was impeached for trying to get Zelensky to just announce an investigation into Biden, because it's all that story. That's all he wanted. He didn't want anything concrete, is what I understand. Just and this is the smart thing to do. It's not, I'm not saying it's good, but it's like, just say you're investigating for corruption. That's it, and then the stories will run. So, yeah, this is an extraordinary timeline, but he still talked about it a lot, and you can see, other former characters really, they're gone. Okay, all right, I'm gonna turn this one off. Oh, do you want to? Oh, yeah. I don't want to. Is it on YouTube? It's 33 minutes. Here's a 5-minute one. You want to put in? I don't want to. Teams is a horror. Let me. That's so great. I'm proud of you. If you guys want to watch this, we'll do it. What are the other names for it? What's in the title? Oh, this one.
Yep.
Yeah. As usual, it's in my head. I honestly don't. Yeah. Output. Okay. This should work. Really? Oh my God. Okay. I'm so sorry. It's just such a struggle with the sound. Yeah. Is it okay? It came back into my ears. This is unbelievable. Why would you? Sorry. This is just amazing. Yeah. Output. Stay there. Do it.
You saw it in his face. You're like deathly serious.
What happened was what?
No, but like, He,
This is
oh
humiliation. This is
no.
humiliation.
Yeah, but like the fact that she's like he didn't take each of those things and be like, well, we'll build a following and get elected up, like get like this president.
More. He's going to hammer him.
For example, no, seriously, just wait till they get an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse. The men's cooking team did not impress the judges for making mistakes. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Bill John, Meatloaf. You fired your accuser. And these are the kind of decisions that would pick me up at night.
I mean, so it's. Is he going to say more?
Say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we got up there.
Oh my God! This is what they put on the big.
But it was a joke. And then it's just like what like it turned into.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks. Full circle.
Well,
No,
but
but
I mean, you need to know. Like, this is that's maybe the most important speech Obama ever gave because it.
that's scary. I didn't even know that was like
Yeah,
was the timelines.
you like right. That really matters, and that there's a Trump is. I mean, he's well. I don't know if you guys know anything about these kinds of people, right? Like, this is basically a power and control person. There are lots of people like that who just fundamentally internally want to do that around them. They can have very different scopes. It could be the world. It could be just your family. They can manifest in lots of ways. But yeah, it's an archetype, and he was humiliated and revenge.
Literally, like,
The revenge business. There's not so much money in the revenge business. This is Princess Bride. I'm trying to get to.
It's just crazy that none of this circulated like during Trump's first campaign. It probably did.
No, a lot of it did. Have you ever seen Trump with Giuliani around about 2000? Giuliani's I'm not dressed completely in drag with pretend like a whole thing, and they're just sort of in New York doing wild things. Very strange. It's very strange. It's very strange. Giuliani's completely dressed up. And Trump, I don't know what they would. I can't like. I know this happened, and now I can't quite tell you what they would do. Like, it wasn't like what the bit was about, but it's videoed, and it was a whole thing. And there's just strange, right? And all the bankruptcies and all those things. Anyway, it's interesting storytelling. It's all stories, and that was some storytelling, and Trump absolutely got revenge. Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, imagine like how Obama feels after making that White House Donald Trump the White House joke, and then like sitting down with him and being like, okay, so this is where the bathrooms are.
the nuclear football that guy has.
Yeah, right. Like this is where. It's just like
It was very awkward. Yeah, no, there's when they arrive in the car and run up the stairs and whatever, and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, but I mean, I, you can leave sort of you can you I think you can step outside of political whatever beliefs and just see this as a mechanism, right? There's a human who's insulted deeply. They are very prone to, they want power. They're very, and it's not clear from it. Like, that could be the end of it, right? And certainly for the years after, it kind of wasn't in the limelight. It did. 2 weeks after that, he says he's not going to run. After people building up a story for him. Yeah. Whack. Television, man. whack.
She's really not comfortable with that. Like, it's also like the Kanye
All right, we're gonna look it up.